This is By the Numbers, a podcast brought to you by the University of South Alabama's Mitchell College of Business. Welcome to By the Numbers. This is Dion Castor. I'm the Director of Marketing and Communications here at Mitchell College of Business. And today we have Dr. Reed Cummings, Professor of Finance and Real Estate at Mitchell College of Business. Also with me is Shane Monagle and Brylan Shirley. They are MBA students here at Mitchell College of Business. And I'm going to hand the mic over to them and let them conduct the interview. Here you go, guys.
Thank you, Dion. Welcome and thank you, Dr. Cummings, to the By the Numbers podcast number 6, hosted by me, Shane.
And me, Brylan.
And we're just going to get straight into it. And we're going to start with asking you, can you share a little bit about your background and upbringing and kind of what that led and how that led you to pursue a career in academia and then also real estate, such a big part of your life?
Sure. Well, I guess I've got to way back because I'm not a young fella. I went to the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. I'm still a bit in mourning because the Tar Heels got bumped out of the tournament, but nevertheless. I was at Chapel Hill. I was actually, my first choice of major was economics. Then I didn't understand the difference between apparently guns and butter, so that didn't work out. But I just kept taking courses, and Chapel Hill's a beautiful place. They had their own golf course. It was really cheap to play. So my first summer, instead of going off to the beach and waiting tables all summer, which I'm sure would have been a lot of fun, I stayed in Chapel Hill, played golf, took some courses. Kind of the same thing happened the next year. And gosh, after 2 years or so, I looked at all of my credits and added them up, and it looked like I was a political science major. So that's how it kind of worked out.
With a minor in golfing.
Not necessarily what I was going for, but here we are.
And so, so from there, I graduated, and it's a long story. We don't have time to get into it here. It would be interesting over a hamburger perhaps one day. But I ended up in Charlotte, North Carolina, and I bought a company there. And that was my first entry into the business world, and I realized pretty quickly how little I knew about business. And what I learned early on in business, I learned largely from the two respective houses of pain. One with my attorney and the other my CPA. I call them houses of pain because they both cost me money every time I went there. And a year or so into it, again, long story, but I heard that one of our competitors was actually leaving the business. And so I approached him about buying some of his computer systems. This predated, the computers we have today, of course. And so, again, long story. And one thing led to another, and I ended up buying his company. So now all of a sudden, I've got all these employees, and I'm managing all these properties, which is crazy. And so I formed a third company that was really contract services, construction management, and property management, maintenance, and that kind of thing. So.
And this is all by what age?
Well, let's see. Bought the first company just before I turned 21, and I ended up selling all of them about 4.5 years later.
Dang.
Oh, we got to catch up.
So you started all these companies with a political science degree. When did you go back and, did you get your MBA?
I did.
I see here in finance and management was your concentration?
I did, yeah. So again, I learned kind of the hard way. I made a lot of mistakes. I'm sure they all cost me money. And so I ended up here in Mobile and actually had gone to work for a developer, a large development company at the time, Herman Maisel and Company. Learned a lot from them and really enjoyed working for Mr. Maisel. He was a great guy. But then I decided I really needed to expand my knowledge and education. And so I went to the University of Mobile. And pursued an MBA. It was tough for me because, I'm working full-time, and I was in school 3 nights a week, 2 to 3 nights a week anyway, for 3 years, and in the summer even more. So, but I was a young guy, had plenty of energy. I wasn't married at the time, so it all kind of worked out.
That helps. So, do you think, if you would have went ahead and gotten this MBA prior to starting these businesses, do you think it would have helped you be more successful in that area? Or, just kind of looking back, if you could have done it before, would you have done that? Or would you just taken the experience, how you got it, and carried on?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I wish I really had a clever answer for you. I'm not sure that I do. I would say that the reason I decided to pursue an MBA was to broaden my business knowledge in a way that had not obtained that knowledge directly firsthand by being in business. And the big thing that I took away from the MBA that I earned was and again, I said earlier, the computer and the advent of computers and really desktop PC computing really took off in the mid-'80s and late '80s, and then and on and into the early '90s. But what really happened then was the birth of the internet, I guess. And so what I learned through my MBA program, in fact, I remember it, second semester, the professor says, okay, so we'll do all of our assignments in Lotus 1, 2, 3. You guys don't know what that is, but that was the original spreadsheet program.
Yep.
And I looked around the room and nobody flinched, so I didn't. So the next day I called a friend of mine who was in the computer business and said, hey, I need a computer and I need something called Lotus 1, 2, 3. Can you?
What the heck is that? Help me out here.
So the thing is that I taught myself everything that I needed to know in order to be successful, not only in the classroom and do the assignments and the homework and all those kinds of things, but also it kind of really set me on a path of understanding that, technology is going to affect business and it's going to evolve. And if you don't recognize that and adapt, you're going to fall behind. And even today, I mean, we look at artificial intelligence, and in many ways it's been around forever. We just didn't call it that. And I could expand on that for you some other time, I'm sure. But that's what the big thing for me was. And the other opportunity that happened for me, and I'm so grateful, is the last semester or so that I was in my MBA program at the University of Mobile. I was asked by a guy named Leon Megginson, who was my mentor there and was a major professor. He asked me if I'd be interested in teaching. And I had never really thought about doing it before. And I said, yeah, I think that's interesting. And so I did. And I loved it. I just absolutely loved being in the classroom. It was so much fun for me. And so that's kind of how I started thinking about academia as a pursuit. It took a while to get here, but that's what happened.
Mm. And then you became a professor here at Sale, and you're teaching finance and real estate. And what actual courses, specific courses, did you teach here?
So here I teach the upper level real estate courses. I teach real estate appraisal and valuation. I teach a course which for me is, I kind of call it the capstone really. It's a high level commercial real estate finance and investment class. And I'll tell you, over the years I've been thinking, because of my background, I've been thinking about creating a course that kind of combines the concepts of property management and real estate development together. And the reason is because if you're a developer and you're a merchant developer, meaning you're going to put together a project for the purpose of selling it quickly, you might take a shortcut or two. Well, if you develop a property for your own account, really, that you intend to own, you're probably not going to take it, cheap carpet or cheap
Yeah.
because those things cost money down the road. So at any rate, some 3 or 4 years ago, I put together this course that combined those two topics. I offered it as a special topics type course. The students loved it. At least I think they did. And I loved teaching it. And so then I kind of developed it into a full-blown course. And just in the last couple of weeks, our department has actually voted to go through the steps necessary to make it a part of the core.
That's great.
Oh, nice.
So we're really excited about that. And something I'm working on now and hope to have it online here in another year or so is to create a graduate level series of courses that can enhance our MBA program. So it would give students the option of having an MBA with a real estate emphasis. And that's not been done here, and I think it's probably time to do so. I'm looking forward to
I
doing
know that's something I would have been interested
Yeah,
in.
I was going to say, if
Well,
you
come
could,
on back. You can take some of these courses.
if
That'd
you
be
could
great.
try to knock that out here over the summer, I mean, I'll definitely be one of your first signups.
Yeah, and
Sounds
it's
good.
great you have such a passion for it as well, like clearly with teaching. And you think that your experience in the industry shaped the way you teach? Do you teach differently, more real life aspects?
No question about that. There's no doubt about it. I have all the Aunt Maggie stories, I'm sure, but in business, like in anything else in life, you're gonna have wins, you're gonna have losses, successes and failures. And I always tell my students when the courses are over, look, let me hear from you. I want to know about all your success, but more importantly, I really want to hear about your failures because they teach you things. Hopefully, you don't forget them, but they do teach you a lot of things. And so I can relate to students and I can tell them, look, this is how things really work. And in fact, I referenced it earlier, the capstone class, I call it the Dream Team class. And I actually published an article recently about it. What I do is I bring in a group of professional investors, real estate folks, appraisers, lenders, contractors, lawyers. And the students are assigned 5 prospective investment opportunities, 5 different property types, 5 different geographic regions. And they have to do a deep dive discounted cash flow and internal rate of return analysis and all these things that they learn during the course. And that's important, yeah. But what's more important is I'm putting them in front of the very last ed class, a group of people they've never known, never met, don't even know who they are until they walk in the room. And they have to act as if in teams they are brokers making a recommendation to the group of investors as to how many millions of dollars they should spend on which property and why. Mm-hmm. And so, the analysis is important, yeah, but it goes beyond that. I mean, are there other factors? Is crime or demographics or weather or tenant mix or the parent company of a tenant? I mean, all these things matter. And so when I put these students in front of this group, and it's coming up here in a couple of weeks, really excited about it, it puts the students in a position that they've never been in before, where they have to stand in front of a group of people that they have never met, and they have to present their arguments in a persuasive, logical, cogent fashion. Now, down the road, they're going to be called upon, and I tell them they will. In your career, one day you're going to have to do this, and you can look back on it and say, I've done this before.
I've done this before, yeah.
And you can lead the team. And so that's the real thing. And what I find is not only do the students just really, it's a lot of stress for sure, and it'll make everybody dress up, because, let's face it, when you're looking sharp, you're feeling sharp. So it's kind of a mock formal event. And so what do I find is that the students just absolutely love it. But, more importantly, the dream team of investors really, really enjoy it. And so each year when I put together that group of 10 or 12 people, sometimes they tell me, hey, yeah, I've heard about that. I appreciate you calling me. I'd love to do it, that kind of thing. So I don't really have to talk people into doing it. It's a way for them to offer some of their time and try to help our students too. So it's a really cool.
It seems like such a huge value, really, for all the people that join. Mm-hmm. I mean, just the experience that you have to be able to, gather all that data and then present it to important people. I mean, that's something that whether you pursue, your own entrepreneurial type business or you go into employment somewhere, people that can gather data, put it all together, and then clearly convey it to important people. I mean, those are going to be the top ranking people, in a company or people running a company. I mean,
absolutely. I couldn't agree more.
Huge value.
Grabbing and analyzing data, that's a skill, and it's an important one. But I think the most important thing is to be able to develop the intuition to be able to articulate what the results mean and what they're trying to tell you and how you can take those results and improve processes or systems or investments or whatever it is. I think data analytics is a really important thing, but what you can do with the outcomes of data analytics is even more so important. So that's what I try to do with these students.
There's actual real life implications to the work. Like how often are you going to be in a job and then they're going to say you have a new project, here's a 2.5-hour exam on keywords.
Absolutely.
That'll never happen.
Yeah.
This is an actual, useful.
Extremely useful.
Extremely, yeah.
Yeah. So aside from the classes that you're teaching, what kind of research are you currently doing? And could you tell us a little bit about the SABRE conference and program? And did you create this program, or are you the head of it? Could you just give us a little bit of background?
Sure. So a bunch of questions there. So current research, currently working on some ideas to study different things that influence real estate markets, and working with our PhD student right now as well, and Dr. Romano Afuso. We're working on the impact of historic properties and their values relative to those same similar types of properties that don't have historic banner and shield types of designations. Kind of interesting. And things along those lines. Most of the research I do is using real estate transactional data. I'm very delighted that the Mobile Area Association of Realtors and the Gulf Coast MLS is about to allow us to start using historical data, 20 years of transactional data. That's an incredibly rich data set, so really excited about that. With respect to the SABRE, I think it's June the 5th, here on campus at the McQueen Alumni Center. We will host our SABRE Market Summit, and we'll bring together real estate professionals, attorneys, appraisers, lenders, and so forth. And this particular year, it's interesting because resilience is a big buzzword, but what does resilience really mean? In terms of our coastal community. When you think about, for example, sea level rise and its impact on things, and this is not to get into a debate about climate change, whether it's real or not, But the fact is that sea level rise data has been being collected around the world for the last 150 years. That's a fact.
Yep.
And you can use that data to forecast the likely increased levels of sea level rise over time. And more importantly, and a little bit scary, you can tell when it's going to happen. So what I'll do as part of that conference is I'm going to do a dynamic model that shows 6 points around Mobile Bay and show what does it look like downtown Mobile, Water Street, with 1 foot of sea level rise, or 10. And literally, Water Street at that point becomes Water Street because it's underwater.
Yeah, it's underwater, yeah.
And not only that, but I'm going to tell you when. And the person who will present behind me is with the Corps of Engineers. He's going to take those same static type models and put them in a dynamic way and model that type of sea level rise coupled with storm surge from hurricanes and other severe weather events. So it's going to be interesting. And one of the big issues that the real estate industry and others as well have faced over the last couple of years is the increasing cost of insurance. Commercial real estate insurance has doubled in the last 5 years. It's gone up at least 7.5% each year since 2017. It is scary. So we're going to talk about that. And in fact, I'm very happy that Commissioner Mark Fowler, who is the commissioner of the Alabama Department of Insurance, is going to be our lead speaker here. On top of that, too, what many people don't understand is how the reinsurance market affects the cost of insurance. So you might hear, for example, an insurer, I don't want to name any names of companies, but they may say, look, we can't insure in that market, or we can't insure houses that are south of I-10. Well, the reason is not necessarily because they don't want to. I mean, because they're in the business of offering insurance and profiting from doing so. It's because they can't offset their risk on the backside. And that is what reinsurance is about. I had an opportunity in London a couple of years ago to tour Lloyd's of London. And it's the most remarkable thing you've ever seen. You literally walk into this place and there's all these stalls that are no more than 8 or 10 foot square. And the underwriters are in place and the deal makers, the brokers on the floor, they approach the underwriter, maybe one that's in oil and gas or one that's in, I don't know, construction or whatever. And they say, okay, I've got this $25 million deal. How much do you want? And instantly the underwriter says, I'll take $5 million, and they move on. I was stunned by that, and I asked the guy that was giving me the tour, what's that? He says, look, if you mess these guys over once, you're out for life. Being able to get onto the floor of Lloyd's and do that kind of thing is a huge, huge deal and a big accomplishment. So I started to develop this knowledge and this understanding about how reinsurance worked. And so the guy that was our tour guide is coming to Mobile to talk about reinsurance and its impact on the markets. And so it's not just commercial real estate, it's also residential real estate. I had a conversation last week with Teresa Williamson, who's CEO of Roberts Brothers, and I said, Teresa, is it true, I'm just imagining this or not, have we seen a lot of residential real estate deals kind of crash and burn because of the costs of insurance? And she said, absolutely. So it's a really big deal. So it's kind of timely, it's kind of topical as well. Also, Casey Calloway, she is the Chief Resilience Officer for the City of Mobile. She'll be on our agenda talking about what resilience means. And I don't mean just in terms of sea level. Resilience in terms of food and education and healthcare and other things. So it's going to be a really impactful conference. I'm very excited about it and looking forward to it. Hope you all can make it too.
And this whole topic around resilience, is that mainly just for the Mobile, Baldwin County type area, or are we talking wider scope?
I think resilience is an issue that affects everyone, not just in this market, but certainly the U.S., and you can look at places around the world. Our focus in this conference will certainly be resilience along the coast, and certainly to a more limited extent, perhaps statewide. But resilience is a big, big issue, and it's something that should be top of mind for a lot of people, especially folks like yourself who are young people. Because let's face it, you're the ones that are going to run the show next. And so, for example, I asked the question, and I will at this conference when I stand up and I start talking about sea level rise, I'm going to say things like, I'm not a climatologist, I'm not an environmentalist, I'm not an ecological
here to start an argument, guys.
And I'm not saying it is or isn't, but I just want you for the next 15 minutes to consider, especially if you have children or grandchildren, or one day might want to have children or grandchildren. Just consider, what if they're right? And so with that, I'll set the stage and off we go, and we'll see what kind of, I hope I don't get booed or off the stage or they give me the hook and pull me out, but hopefully it'll be well received. I think it will be.
Yeah.
I'm pretty excited.
Another interesting thought that I'm having about resilience. So think about properties, along the coast of California and think about properties along the East Coast and here on the Gulf Coast, it seems to me like, especially on the topic of sea level rise, these properties would be less resilient than properties, say, in central United States. But these low resilience properties are the most expensive in the United States. Is there some kind of tie to that?
It's an interesting question. 70% of the population in this country lives in a coastal area. And why do they do so? Because it's pretty.
Awesome.
And it's awesome. And just like why we live here.
We want to go surfing.
But the fact is that at some point, a number of those properties, especially the ones that are closer to the waterline, are going to be in trouble. So, resilience is an issue, and sea level rise is just one component of it.
Yeah, of course.
But overall, it's an overarching issue, I think, one that's critically important, and I would hope that we will open some, if not eyes, then certainly some minds at this conference, and would encourage people to follow up with us. And certainly the City of Mobile has just in the last, about 3 months ago, and I'm glad that they did it. Again, Casey Calloway with the City Chief Resilience Officer would be one of our speakers. They just released their City of Mobile Resilience Plan. It's a very comprehensive document. It took a great deal of effort to put it together, and it touches on areas that, again, are not just climate related, but they're education and food and overall welfare and things of these nature. Because if you don't find ways to continue to safeguard your community against threats that may occur in the future, when they do occur, you won't be prepared.
Yep.
And that is a killer. It's just not something that's a good idea at all. So I'm hopefully that we're going to open some doors from the university's ability to interact with the business community and the community at large as well. Hopefully we can begin to be a part of that conversation.
And open some eyes
Yeah.
to
Yeah,
what can happen.
Absolutely.
A little off topic, but I actually saw, I think it's Tuvalu. I don't know if you've ever heard that country. They reckon it'll be the first country to be lost to
Really?
to rising sea levels. Yeah,
Where is it?
it's a good question. It's an island off of,
Is
could say somewhere near Asia, and it's basically a ring. The whole island. So there's a lagoon in the middle and the sea on the outside, and you can see from 1.9, and you can see lagoon and the sea, and they reckon that'll be the first country
Holy
lost.
crap.
Yeah, it's the least visited country in the world because
Well,
you can't get there really.
yeah, and
Yeah,
so
yeah.
think about some of the great
But
cities.
they all have boats.
Think about some of the great cities in this country. Mobile is one of them. of
Yes.
course.
Yes.
But you think about New York, you think about Charleston, you think about New Orleans, think about Los Angeles, think about certainly Houston. These are all Miami. These are all cities that face real
Yeah.
problems as sea level rises. Think about London. Think about cities, Marseille along the Mediterranean, and it's a major issue because sea level rise doesn't discriminate. It
No,
rises
it just
equally
happens,
everywhere.
yeah.
It just happens. So it's a
Even
big deal.
Back in my hometown, we've a kind of, I suppose it's called a promenade, a beach wall, and that's always been a height. Like from when I was younger, it was always the same. And then about 10 years ago, they had to put about 2 foot on it because it kept flooding every single year.
Dang.
And 20 years before that, it never once flooded.
There you go.
It's usually
Well,
to see, yeah.
See, and so
It's
when
happening.
you have that kind of experience with something that you can personally relate to, and you can mark time, as in, okay, I remember when the wall was this high, and now it's got to be this high, and 10 years from now it's going to be even higher still.
Yeah.
That's something you can relate to, right? You can start to frame it in your mind. Oh, yeah, this could be a real problem, and what are we doing about this? That's the what if part, right? What
Yeah.
if they're right? Well, you've seen it right in your
Exactly,
own,
yeah.
be right in your own backyard.
Yeah,
sense.
when I was younger, it'd be like, there'd be a walkway and it might be a foot high you could like jump onto. Now it's about 4 foot high.
Yeah.
To keep expanding,
Yeah,
it can't jump on. And I'm like, yeah, that's definitely an issue that needs to be addressed. But taking it back just a little bit, Sabre, what is that to the regular person? When was that set up? And
So
what are
sure.
the other previous topics you covered?
Sure. So around 2006, 2007, our college's benefactor, Abe Mitchell, had an idea that he wanted to create a real estate program here at the university, a real estate academic program. And at the same time as well, he wanted to create kind of a research center that could focus on real estate. And so he recruited, and the university ultimately hired a gentleman named Don Epley, who was a great friend of mine and mentor of mine, largely a lot to do with why I decided to pursue a doctorate. But at any rate, so the Center for Real Estate Studies was born 2007 or so. And that's when I first met Don. And he asked me to be on his advisory board, and I was happy to do it. And then a year or so later, he asked me, would I be interested in teaching a class? And so I did, and just remembered how much I had loved doing so all those years ago. And then along to 2010, along comes the BP oil spill. And talk about resilience issues, right? And so then Don was part of securing a grant that a number of universities got a piece of, a very large grant. And so he asked me if I'd be interested in working with him to work on some analysis of potential economic development types of projects that might be possible if BP one day wrote a really big check. And so we did. And so out of that, the advisory board kind of got the idea that maybe we ought to expand our function. And so that's where the Center for Real Estate and Economic Development came to be. Some years later, as I finished my doctorate and came to work here at the university full-time, and Don retired, I took over as director of the center. And so again, things continued to go well, and I remember during the pandemic, around January or so of 2021, we were still having faculty meetings by Zoom. And so I'm listening to Dr. Joe Hare, who runs our PhD program, talk about the overwhelming response that we had gotten in terms of potential PhD students who were interested in pursuing our newest concentration in business analytics. And as I listened to him talk, I mean, it was something like 90 people had responded and applied for maybe 7 or 8 slots. And I thought, goodness gracious. And that's when it hit me. I mean, literally while the meeting's going on, I'm thinking, somebody is going to do a Center for Business Analytics here. Why not us? Mm-hmm. And so I grabbed a pencil and I started playing with words and I started writing things down. And next thing you know, I wrote the word SABRE. SABRE stands for the South Alabama Center for Business Analytics, Real Estate, and Economic Development. And so I pitched the idea and went all the way up through the provost's office and the president's office, and they approved it. And so SABRE was born. And then part of what I wanted to do as well, at least my vision was, and it's worked out, is that we not only include this as a thing, but also align it with our business analytics PhD concentration. And I'm proud to say that we've done that, and in fact, I'm chairing a dissertation for a student right now who's actually using data that SABRE provided. So, baby steps, I'm sure, but every step's a step in the right direction, and really excited about what we're doing now. And I would add, too, that from that, our Yana Stopowski, who runs our, who's more on the data analytics side, I'm on the real estate side, you might say, she had a brainchild here 3 or 4 years ago to create a conference that focused on data analytics. And so now we offer 2 conferences a year. The SABRE Market Summit, which we talked about earlier, is coming up soon in June. And then in November, we will have our 4th SABRE Analytics Summit. And it's been incredible to see the industry participants come out for that conference and to see what the science of data analytics is about and how it's evolved, and now more so even the tools that are available to do this kind of inquiry. It's really exciting, and who knows where we go from here.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's amazing. You have to find your next protege now to take on the SABRE project and bring it into the future. So it's having its 50th.
Well, I'm in room 126. Come on down and see me.
Right across the hall.
Once the MBA or real estate comes in, we'll be able to.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Well, through starting all these new programs and your various teaching roles and research roles, we saw that you have received a lot of very prestigious awards, including the Professor of the Year Award and the Best Paper of the Year Award. Could you kind of give us a little bit of stories on how you achieved these prestigious awards?
Well, the beauty of it is none of those awards you apply for. They just kind of happen.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure if I'd set my sights on any of them and applied for them, I would have not been successful. I don't know. I've never been one really to chase awards or things like that. But I am a consumer of information and a consumer of education. And I think you can look at my life and see that there's a pattern. As a professional, I pursued professional designations, not to put it on my resume or my business card per se, but to learn something new. Mm-hmm. I went through the CCIM program. I went through the CSM program, and I can tell you what all these things are. But the point is that I believe that education is a lifelong pursuit, and professional and personal development is something that everyone ought to do, no matter their age. And when you stop learning, I mean, you really kind of stop growing, right? So, thanks for mentioning all those, but they're not
Yeah,
important.
yeah.
I mean, they just happened, and I'm
Well,
proud of
I
them
mean,
for sure.
it's
and
very awesome that you achieve such
I
prestigious
just don't know if we have
awards.
time to mention every single award and
Yeah.
accreditation. Was it
Yeah.
7 different designations I saw
Like,
online?
you know, they're in a closet somewhere collecting dust, but I've got them.
Yeah.
I was voted for them.
Very humble of you.
Yes.
But and then also then go back into real estate. So you've over nearly 40 years of experience in real estate. Can you discuss any significant projects you did or any kind of memorable projects you worked on?
Sure. So there was a time where I was involved with a group of people and investors. We did build-to-suit projects for Federal Express. And what a build-to-suit is essentially, the would-be tenant says, look, here, we want you to build this building in this location. These are our specs. This is our prototype. How much would our rent be if you built it like we wanted it and rented it to us? So we did FedEx build-to-suits around the country for a period of time. That was, I learned a lot in doing that. I think one of the coolest projects I did, which is probably also one of the most difficult projects I ever had to do, and it was primarily because of politics, was a project called the fish camps on Dauphin Island. When you cross the Dauphin Island Bridge, that first little thing on the right, those little multicolored buildings, that's what I did. That's the fish camps. But it's not what I wanted to do. What I wanted to do was build duplex condominiums there. Well, Dauphin Island is a wonderful place, but there are only, I don't know, 500 or so permanent residents, and those are the folks that vote for the city council and the mayor, and those are the folks that control the zoning decisions. And I fought the town of Dauphin Island for almost 2 years. Paid an
Goodness.
enormous amount of money, I didn't want to tell you how much money, and interest, as we carried the cost of the land we'd already bought. Ultimately, though, I was defeated twice in rezoning. So then I had to step back for a minute and think about how in the world could I develop this property without changing the zoning. Long story, but the key is, if you look at the restrictive covenants for the fish camps, in the very first paragraph where it talks about use, there's a statement that says, the units can be used for any purpose, provided, however, they shall not be used for overnight, for residential use. But that's not to say that you can't spend the night there every night, just like in a hotel, right? You, technically, I guess you could live there, but I mean, really, you couldn't get through mail, you couldn't register to vote at a hotel
Yeah,
address. But if you had the money and you wanted to stay in a hotel every night of your life, you certainly could, right? So that's how I got it done. I didn't need rezoning, and that's how the fish camps got done. It was a challenging project because as we rolled along, guess what? 2004, September or so, Hurricane Ivan, boom.
Oh,
6
man.
feet of sand across the island.
Yep.
And it, another $100,000 that we hadn't counted on. Got all that sand pushed away, and we kept building and building. Well, guess what happened a year later? Hurricane Katrina, same story, but worse. I mean, so these are the kind of things in development that you don't really, you have to have some level of contingency planning and some money set aside for that. I promise you the lender's going to require you to. But you can't count for everything.
Yeah, you
And
really
it's
can't.
a risk, right?
You
You
have
just
no
to do
clue
it.
when it's going to happen.
Right. So it was a cool project, a very difficult project to do. We pulled it off. And on top of that, too, when most of these units came to the market, because we pre-sold everything before we started construction, the market was just on fire. It was ridiculous. I mean, you could have thrown a rocket, anything on the water, tripled the price, and made money. So
Dang.
we were very fortunate and very blessed. There's no doubt. Although we had difficulties and challenges, things did work out quite well. So we're happy about that.
Well, how has this extensive background in real estate, helped you further your teaching and research skills? I mean, you mainly focus your research and teaching on real estate. So how has this real life experience transitioned into helping others get started in their own real estate careers?
Great question. So I'm not so sure about the research part, but I was at a meeting, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago, and I was standing in the hallway waiting on to go into another meeting, and there were people kind of talking around, milling around, talking, and I overheard somebody say, "Hey, congratulations on Blue Raider Realty." Well, I looked around and I recognized the person they were talking to. This is a friend of mine, Philip Seagraves. He's from Middle Tennessee State University, home of the Blue Raiders, just as we are at South, home of the Jaguars. So I made a mental note to call Philip up one day and ask him about that. And so some time went by and I just forgot about it. Well, then I called him tell me about this. And he did, and it was essentially a real estate company he had started for real estate students. There's a path for students to get licensed, and I said, well, okay, well, who do they work for? He said, well, they work for Blue Raider. I said, well, who owns Blue Raider Realty? He says, well, I do. I said, wait a minute, you own a operating for-profit company? He said, yeah, but we take the profits and we put it back into programming. I said, okay, I get that. I said, but what did the university attorneys say about that? And he says,
Talk
well,
to him yet.
and he says, well, actually, they're not real happy because I'm using the university marks and logos and I said, okay, well, I won't be down on that hill here in Mobile. Well, about that same time, I had, I was teaching the course that I mentioned earlier, that capstone course, and a friend of mine that I know in the real estate academic world was working for a large company, and they sponsored this contest, and it went like this. Student real estate teams from around the world theoretically are given $1 billion. And what would you do with that $1 billion if you invested it into real estate investment trusts? How would you allocate the money? Geographically, property type, and so forth. So I met with the students at the end of the semester and said, okay, we've got to lock these things, and what are your choices? And, well, what do you think? No, this is your deal. Well, ultimately, they did finally press me, and I answered the question. If it was me, I'd put the bulk of the money into industrial real estate. And what I mean by that is, think about it. Amazon was expanding across the country. This is 2018. Distribution centers, logistical warehouses, all these things were just exploding in terms of growth across the country. And I thought, if I had a bunch of money, that's where I would put it.
Yeah.
So we locked it in, and once you made your choices, that was it. And then the results were looked at every quarter, and then for the whole year, kind of based on the performance of different REIT indexes, very similar to the S&P or the Dow. Well, gosh, at the end of the first quarter, results came in, and we won. And we're going to get a little money, and so second quarter, we won again. And third quarter, we won, and the fourth quarter, we won, and we won the grand prize. Well, I mean, we beat some pretty good schools, Harvard, Columbia,
Wow.
San Diego, University of Georgia, Connecticut. I mean, these are really good real estate programs. Regensburg in Germany. Well, they sent us a check for 40 grand, cash. Well, wow, okay. So next year, my friend, different company, same contest, same idea, different money. Guess what? We won again. Well, guess what?
Dang.
They don't offer this thing there. I guess Harvard and Columbia got tired of getting beat
Yeah,
by
I'm
South
tired of
Alabama.
losing.
But at any rate, so now we have $50,000 in cash. And what I've learned about academics is if you don't find a place for that money, it'll find a place for itself.
Yeah.
So with this Blue Raider Realty thing in mind and this cash in front of us, I had this idea to create an internship program called Jaguar Realty. And so I approached Roberts Brothers, one of the larger companies in the region, and I worked out a deal with them where we could literally place students with them to pursue an internship. And so the deal is a student is either a real estate major or a minor. They go through the pathway that we offer here in the college to get licensed as a salesperson by the State of Alabama Real Estate Commission. And then we place them with an intern. And so the Mitchell-Moulton Matching Initiative gave us the opportunity to take that $50,000 and turn it into $100,000. And so now we have a fully endowed $100,000 plus scholarship that will be available, forever to pay out $1,000 for every intern who goes through the internship program. And so it's a way to help the interns, not only fulfill their obligation for the internship, the graduation requirement, but also to help largely offset the cost of the 3-semester-hour internship course, as well as it puts them in an environment where they're surrounded by people who do this for a living. And that's, I can't teach that in a book.
No, you
It's-
really
It's
can't.
a really valuable
Yeah.
experience. And hopefully the idea is that these students will develop some interest in wanting to stay in the business. And if they do, and they remain with the company after the internship is over, that's the goal, I tell the students, look, the only thing that separates you, that makes you different from the folks that have been doing it for 30 years, is that they've been doing it for 30 years. I mean, you both have the same professional designation, this license. So it's worked out well. We've had 3 or 4 placed with Roberts Brothers, and we have our first student this semester placed with a commercial firm, and I'm hoping to expand the list of companies that can participate in this with us. It's a really cool
It's
opportunity.
incredible. And do you have to be in the business school to get a minor in real estate?
No, you do not.
Okay. And then why would you think the understanding of real estate is crucial to anyone, no matter what their field of study?
Well, Savills of London in June or July or so of 2022, a really big company, estimated the value globally of all real estate on the planet. $327.5 trillion. Now, that's more money than every stock, every
Yep.
bond, and every ounce of gold ever mined. So to disregard real estate as something that's not important, I think is a short-sighted, if not naive, viewpoint. Because, if you look at the preamble to the Code of Ethics for the National Association of Realtors, it starts with the words, "Underneath all is land." And isn't that a true statement?
It is.
I mean, they're not making any more real estate, but they made a heck of a lot of it. But, I mean, but real estate has a lifespan. The land's always there, but the buildings and the vertical improvements and all,
change, yep.
it changes over time. And so, as an investment class, real estate is huge. And so I personally, and I'm sure I can find folks that can argue with me, and that's okay, but I personally think that every college student in America, every high school student to a certain point, should take at least principles of personal finance and principles of real estate. Because over the course of your lifetime, you've got to be able to manage your money, and most likely, you're going to live somewhere, right? Hopefully not in your car. And so that means you're either going to rent a house or rent an apartment or buy a house or a condo or whatever. I mean, that's all real estate. And understanding how that transaction works, because it's a complex transaction and it can be intimidating for many people. I think having a really great understanding of the overall process is so important. And I would encourage any student on campus to, at the very least, consider taking our Principles of Real Estate course. If they don't pursue real estate as a major, that's fine. But at least, get some working knowledge of how that business works and how the industry works. I think it's really important.
I could be wrong with this now, but is McDonald's the biggest real estate company in the world?
I think
Is that
so.
a little?
I've
big landowner or
I've read
something
that
like
on an article before.
It could be. It could be.
I think they have an agreement
They-
that if you're a franchisee, you buy the land and they own it eventually. Then so that's kind of their main company. Nearly, it's actually
Yeah,
the land they own is their most profitable or most valuable.
yeah, they
part
don't
of
make
business.
they don't really make all their money from chicken nuggets. They make it from the properties that they own. It's kind of the article that I read pertaining to that is
Yeah.
that was basically the gist of the story is
That's
the nuggets and the burgers are just for show, basically.
a facade.
Yeah, the franchising aspect of it is what really generates their large
The
amount
mass
of
wealth, yeah.
wealth. So how could just any average day individual get into real estate and use it, to generate and accumulate wealth? Is that something you have to have a lot of money to get into, or are there kind of ways that anyone could get into it, start making money from it?
Well, that's an interesting question. I read an article just a week or so ago. 90% of the billionaires in this world made their money in real estate. 90% of the billionaires in this world made their money in real estate. Think about that. Now, I'm not a billionaire.
Not yet.
Unfortunately. but I will be tomorrow. No. So here's the thing. You can start in real estate by just starting. You don't have to kick it into high gear right off the bat, and you're going to make mistakes, but the key is to start. Now, how can you start with no money? I bought my first property with no money. In fact, I can remember this guy I knew, he had a house he wanted to sell. I was interested. He offered to sell it to me. I was going to use it as a rental property. And I said, okay, well, will you finance it for me? And he said, sure. So we worked out the terms of a mortgage. And then he wanted a down payment. Well, I didn't really have enough money for the down payment.
Yeah.
I said, well, would you finance the down payment too? And he kind of looked at me funny. And so we worked out a shorter term agreement for that. And I remember later after the closing that he kind of looked at me and says, how is it that I'm walking away from this closing and I had to write you a check? Because he had to give me like the security deposit and the first month's rent that the guy had already paid. And so it's kind of how it worked. But I guess my point is, you have to be creative, you have to be inventive, and you have to ask. They say no, fine. Go find somebody else. Ask them. You'll find somebody who'll say yes eventually.
Yep.
And the other thing I would say is the backside of that is down the road when you're asked, remember your experience, right? Don't always just, I wouldn't do that ever. Well, wait a minute. That's how you got your start, right? So I remember Herman Maisel telling me a story one time that he was a basketball coach at Murphy High School in the 50s, won the state championship, boys basketball, and the boosters were so delighted they gave him a set of golf clubs. Well, Mr. Maisel didn't play golf, so he sold the clubs and used the money to buy his first piece of real estate. So it's just, just amazing how you can get started. So, but you have to get started. There's just no question.
Yeah, I think people generally think that you have to have large amounts of money to get into, investment opportunities such as real estate. But really, I mean, like you said, by being creative, by being innovative, finding ways, to get into it. And like you said, just talking to a bunch of people, asking a bunch of people, I mean, you could get into it potentially for free. I mean, I've heard stories of people that buy houses and then finance them and immediately rent them out to other people, charge or rent higher than the mortgage payment every month, and then they make the difference every single month.
Is
and
this a
then,
great country or what? I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, fantastic.
It's
Yeah,
awesome.
absolutely. Yeah.
Like, all right, dang, I have to pay $1,500 per month on the mortgage payment. All right, charge $2,000 a month for rent. You're making $500 every month.
Absolutely. Well, everything relates to risk and an individual's ability and tolerance for risk. I mean, so I'll ask students, so who would jump out of a perfectly good airplane? And nobody raises their hand. I'm not surprised. I say, okay, well, if you had a parachute, who would, and a few hands go up. Okay, great. So who would jump into the ocean and swim with sharks? Not too many takers. Well, what if I put you in a shark-proof suit? A few. What if I put you in a shark-proof suit in a shark-proof cage? And so when the students start to realize there's that bandwidth for personal tolerance of risk, right?
Yeah.
So within real estate, risk is big, it's real, and the thing is whereas with a stock or a bond, you could get on your phone and boom, sell it, I'm out.
Yeah.
You can't do that. I mean, how many times have you seen a line of people standing beside a for sale sign in front of a piece of real estate? Not very often.
Not too often.
So, the thing is that in everything in this life that you owns a piece of you. I don't care what it is. But for sure, that is true with real estate because the deal, getting into it takes time, and holding it and owning it and selling it also takes time. So you just have to be mindful of those things. And every decision won't be a great one. Hopefully, you look back at the end of the day and you made more good decisions than bad.
Yeah.
So, yeah, hopefully.
More green than red.
Exactly. Right.
yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
I suppose last topic we'll touch on is the study abroad program in London. You're going to be heading off this summer, leading a few students through London.
I am. I'm really excited.
One of our friends is going with
He's
you.
actually-
Sam.
Oh, perfect. Yeah.
Sam,
Mike,
yes,
Mike,
yeah.
yeah, great,
So I
good
think
guy.
he's
One of our good friends, yeah.
He's going to come over and visit when I'm in Ireland and
Oh,
we'll get a few of the European guys together. But what do you think they can expect from this experience, and what do you think they'll learn, and what they'll get from learning in another college, abroad, a different culture, a different experience?
Well, I have an answer for you, but I'd like to real quickly tell you kind of how I got involved in it, and it
please.
kind of mirrors everything I've done in my life in terms of recognizing an opportunity and turning it really into the one that you want, right? So when I was going through my doctoral program 10, 12 years ago, one of the people in the program was a guy named Robert Forrester, who is at Midwestern State University in Wichita Falls, Texas, about an hour's or so drive north of Dallas. And after we graduated, we were on the phone one day, and he says, "Hey, I'm getting ready to go, and I'm packing, and family, we're going to London." And I thought, okay, you've worked really hard in your doctoral program, good for you, you're going to take a vacation. He says, no. He says, Midwestern runs a pretty robust British Studies program. They offer courses in a number of subjects, including international business. And so they had asked him to come over and kind of feel it out, and I think they were kind of feeling him out to see if maybe it would be a good fit, maybe he would one day teach the class. And I said, wow, that really sounds cool. When you get back, give me a call. Well, he did, and he called me up, and I listened, and he was just, ebullient, as you can imagine. He said, oh, it was fantastic, I had a super time, and incredible, and Robert's personality is that way anyway. Great guy. And so I listen, and I'm just thinking, oh, my goodness. And so when he finally ran out of breath, I said, okay, one question. How do I get involved in that? Well, the next year they invited me to come over and kind of try it on for size, and that's how it turned out that I now am the co-professor, along with Dr. Forrester, of this class in London.
Dang.
So that's how I got involved in it, and I've been doing it now for about 10 years. It is the highlight of my life. It is international travel in general, but international travel for sure, opens your mind to so many things. And so to answer your question, I think, hopefully I'll do it this way, and when I'm asked by prospective students, and certainly their parents, so you've done this for a while, and you've been all over, and I really have. I've traveled all over Europe, because getting there is the hard part. Getting around is pretty cheap once you're there.
Yeah, it's just expensive to fly there. Yeah.
And so I say, well, the answer to your question is, what's the big takeaway? It's a really easy answer. And it surprises people when I say that. They go, oh, Okay, well, what is it? And I said, well, we're all the same. What do you mean by that? I said, well, think about it. You know, everybody wants the freedom and the ability to line up with their maker, whatever that means to them. But beyond that, the things that make us different from folks across the way, it's really just a sense of space, a sense of taste, the foods we eat, the words we use. I mean, we really want the same things, don't we? We want good things for our family, health and prosperity for ourselves and for those that we love. We want, hopefully, honesty and transparency and actually leadership from the folks running the show. So what makes us different? Again, it's those little things. It's just, again, sense of space, taste, words we use, how we speak. That's it. And so that is the cool thing for me, to be able to take students from America and show them the world is a really big place, but not nearly as big as you think, and that wherever you go, talk to people. You will meet so many incredibly nice people who are willing to help you and advise you and guide you, and they will listen to you. And what I also have found is that, especially in the UK and across Europe, people are interested about what's going on in America. I can't tell you the number of times that, so what do you think about this? Or I'm not getting into politics, but what do you think about that? It's really amazing how much interest people abroad have in what we're doing. So in the same way that we're interested in what they're doing, it's a two-way street. So for me, it's just, again, a highlight of my life. It has broadened my perspective and viewpoints in so many ways that had I not had these opportunities, I mean, I'm not so sure that I would have spent the money or taken the time to go and be abroad for 5, 6, 7 weeks. I talk to people, and they've just gotten back from a 10-day trip. Oh yeah, we did London and Paris and Munich and Rome. And I'm thinking, that's fantastic, but what you did is a lot of travel.
Yeah, all that in 10 days. I mean, you don't really have time to experience the actual culture of the area.
So, as you said, so when you experience that, when you literally, immerse yourself in the culture and you begin to acclimate and you begin to understand that time means different things in different places. For example, in Italy, time means nothing. It just means nothing. But in London, every 15 minutes, boom, 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 it matters, right?
Very fast-paced.
It's just a different
the tube
approach.
comes along every 6 minutes, you'll be ready to go.
It's crazy. But
In Italy, they're still asleep.
right, it's just
Like,
funny.
I have to go to work today?
It's a lot of fun. It's a great joy of my life. There's no question about it.
And what college is it that you're associated with?
So our program, again, Midwestern's program, we reside at Queen Mary University of London in East London, a very ethnic, interesting part of London. And it's located literally 2 blocks from the Mile End tube stop. And so if you look at the tube stops and how they're named, the bank, well, it's under the Bank of England.
Yep.
I mean, nothing fancy about that. Tower. So that's, you come out and you're right there. It's the Tower of London, commemorates the Great Fire. Well, Mile End, there was a rule, there was a law back in the day, whenever the day was, that you could not bury people until you were a mile outside the city limits. So Mile End, and literally on Queen Mary's campus, there is a cemetery right there on the campus. We walk by it on the way to go to class. But what makes Queen Mary different as a college campus relative to, say, other programs like King's College and City University of London and London School of Economics and others in the city, is that this is an actual, what we would consider to be more typical of an American campus, in the sense that everything is self-contained. They have dormitories, they have classrooms, they have gymnasiums, they have cafeterias, a place to do your laundry and so forth. It's very secure. So in that sense, our students, it's not like, boom, they're in an office building in the West End trying to figure out, where do I go find something to eat? So it's a unique experience, and Queen Mary has been a great host to our program over the years, and I think our students enjoy that culture and the ability, again, to kind of reside in one place. Thankfully, and I think the students would be first to agree with this, faculty and students stay in different dormitories. So although we see them for class, we're not all over.
They can still have their fun.
Yeah.
Exactly. So it's a great program, and it's well run. And the other thing that I have enjoyed about this particular program is that the leadership, the folks from Midwestern, they have professional staff on the ground. So, if a student gets sick or gets hurt, I mean, the Royal London Hospital is literally 8 blocks down the street. They're going to make sure that you get taken care of, no question.
That's awesome.
You know, they take care of, they don't take care of your travel arrangements, but they want to know where you're going, who you're going with, when you're leaving, when you're coming back, so we keep track of things. They don't allow any foolishness. I mean, everybody's going to grow and do the things that young people do and so forth. Old people do, I guess. But, you know, you're in another country. You break their laws, that's beyond our control. You know, you could be in trouble and certainly be deported or worse. And we've not had that worse case scenario. But it's a well-structured, well-run program. I'm proud to be involved with it, and hopefully there'll be many more opportunities in the years ahead for me to go back.
Fantastic. That's great. Well, I suppose that's pretty much everything covered. You got quite a lot in there. Thank you very much for joining us for the
My pleasure.
By the Numbers podcast number 6 now.
Yep.
And that's everything from me, Shane.
And me, Brylan.
Yeah, thank you very much for listening.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to By the Numbers, brought to you by the Mitchell College of Business. Stay tuned. There'll be a new episode coming soon.